Keita was
Mm-hmm.
17, and you were texting me a little bit. Keita Bates-Diop has grown into I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, has grown into a really terrific um, role player for us, and he has a lot more to his game than any of us were giving him credit for when we initially signed him and going into this
Mm-hmm.
season as well. Because we were like, oh, he's a perimeter defender. He's long, but he has
Uh-huh.
no offensive game. And he has grown into somebody that can really finish amongst the trees. He's kind of tricky with his up and unders and his pump fakes. And he's a very intelligent player. And he's become kind of a sniper for us as well at
Mm-hmm.
times. He's kind of streaky, but when he's open, it's going down.
Right.
So shout out to him. He's really become, and I think it's also a confidence thing because toward the end of the year with Sohan sitting out, Keldon sitting out from time to time, Devin not being there, he's really kind of had to step up just
Yep.
out of necessity, and he's slowly kind of taken it upon himself to be more aggressive, and that really goes for a lot of these guys, Trey Jones as well,
Yeah.
Dominic Barlow obviously, Champagny, Mamu. So we'll get into it later, but we're gonna have another problem on our hands, Drew, where we have a lot of dudes that have
Yep.
played into having minutes going into next
Yeah.
season, but not all of them can, obviously. So
Yeah, for sure. I talked a little bit about that on the video I did today. It was just I named it San Antonio Spurs offseason preview. I went
mhm.
over Bobby Marks' article on ESPN Plus, just breaking down the Spurs offseason. So y'all go check that out if you haven't. But just to talk about KBD, like you were saying, that's exactly what he said in the press conference, I believe after the Blazers game. Maybe it wasn't the Blazers game, but it was in some recent press conference at the end of the year where he had another, close to 20-point scoring night. He said, like, since I've gotten here, like Pop has really given me the confidence
Mhm.
to, of what I can do as a player. And these situations that he's had recently, as you just referenced, because of the injuries where he's gotten more of an opportunity to basically, be the main scorer in an NBA game, which usually, minus the circumstances, that wouldn't happen. That's really allowed him to grow and evolve his game. And like you said, we were texting about it, and it's kind of funny because, I mean, this was a two-way guy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he wasn't, I'm about to say he was Don Barlow back then. Like, obviously it's a little bit different circumstances because he had been in the league for a little bit with Minnesota, but like he was in that position, like, let's just give this guy a try and see what happens. And, he's worked himself into, like like you said, we have a lot of guys, especially at that 4 position that we like, where we're going to have to make some decisions because, we picked up Mamu late in the year, not to
Mhm.
get too into the weeds on this, but we picked up Mamu late in the year. Obviously Barlow, had a great performance to end the year, strong, really finished to the year overall, showed some promise in the G League. But then you've got Sohan, but then you've still got KBD, like, does somebody out of, like, I mentioned the possibility in the video today, maybe we do bring all 4 back, but maybe we decide to do something different. But the point is, going back to KBD, all of these guys' progression has made that decision difficult,
Mhm.
right? More difficult and less clear than it was, before the trade deadline.
And I'm a fan of it, to be honest. I know it's like a difficult decision, but
But
going
that's what
into
we need to
training camp,
do.
yeah, now going into this offseason, going into training camp, Mamu, KBD, even our boy Barlow to an extent, they're like, I have an opportunity here
Right.
to be a rotational player next year. So they better get their butts in the gym and start trying to beat each other out. And I'm all about competition. I think Sohan's a little bit safer than them, obviously, because he's a lottery pick and
Hmm.
he showed
Right.
us pretty much for the whole year that he's the starting caliber
Right.
power forward.
He
But as
was our
far as
top
that,
10 pick. Like,
yeah, yeah, we're building not around him, but he's definitely a cornerstone for the
right.
rest of for the rest of his career. Hopefully, knock
Hmm.
on wood. But those other 3 dudes, I mean, it's up for grabs. And you mentioned Barlow. Has he come back on a 2-way? Has he played himself into a guaranteed deal? Could he get more money elsewhere? I don't know if he's going to get more money
Right.
elsewhere, but it's interesting debate for sure.
Yeah, especially with KBD, he's one of the few guys on the roster, or the few free agents that we have on the roster.
Hmm.
Him and Gorgie are the only 2 free agents who are unrestricted. Um, and I think, especially with how much we really like KBD and how much he knows the system, how
Yeah,
long he's been around, the fact that he's still young, only like 25, 26, something like that. I mean, I think he's definitely a Pop favorite for
I do too.
sure. So I really am high on the prospects of him coming back. You never know. Got a little bit of the fun awards. So
Okay.
the first award that I kind of made up here was the Silver and Black Award. And it's
Mm,
basically just for the most, like, the player on the team who just embodies like all the Spurs culture. Like, this is just like one of Pop's favorite players. And my guy was KBD. We talked about it earlier about the way that he's developed scoring. I mean, not only is he, he's a hassle on defense too, and he's annoying with his length. And that also translates to the offensive end. Like, I can't tell you how many times he's like holding the ball over his head, driving through people on Euro steps because he's 6'8" and he's
Yeah.
super lengthy. So it's like he can get to the rim on that Euro step and he's like, I'm not going to try to dribble this and, get it ripped. I'm just going to put it over my head, walk through these guys and then, drop it in the basket. So, I mean, but like you said earlier, when we got him on a two-way, he had no bag. And by the end of and even going into this year, we're like, KBD doesn't have a bag. By the end of the year, KBD has a bag. I'm like, what is going on? So shout out to Pop, shout out to the developmental staff. A lot of that has to do with what we already talked about earlier with him getting that opportunity, because of all the injuries and the circumstances this year. But dude, like I said, he didn't care. He'd start, he'd sit, and it never mattered. He was going to go out and play hard. So shout out to KBD.
1,000%. Great pick.